We'll be passing it around. All right, guys, so welcome to this month's meetup. We're very excited because we have known Jennie and Greg now for several years now, and we're very excited to have them here join us here on this Sunday afternoon over here at Windy City REI. And they are the property people. So Greg here has been general contractor here for over 20 years now. And Jennie does a really good work with design as well as systems and operations. And together, they formed the property people back in 2019. And to this date, they've completed 15 projects, and everything from single family gut rehabs, building a second floor, digging down the basement, all the way up to condo renovations and single family ground up development, as well as most recently, multi-unit condo brand new development as well. And we're going to be doing a Q&A session and discussing a lot of the experiences that they've had over the years, as well as things to consider specifically here in Chicago. So we're very excited to have you here. And before we begin, guys, just give us a 2-minute rundown. Who you are, what's your background, I guess, where are you guys right now in your investment journey?
That was 4 questions. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having us here. It's really nice. We love you guys, so we're glad to be here. So I'm Jennie Berger. I, up until 3.5 years ago, had no experience in this industry. I was a TV producer for 8 years. I was a yoga teacher for a couple of years. I've always been a creative. So it was kind of like maybe in the stars that I would eventually end up doing something creative within this industry. And so I've kind of been drawn to the design element. What do we do? Where are we from? Where are we in our investment journey? Okay, in our journey right now. So we're working on a new construction 3-unit condo building in Lakeview. It's our second new construction multi-unit building in the city. We should be done in about 3 weeks. Or 6, he said. And we should be starting on a single family home new construction with a client shortly as soon as she gets her permit. So we are working with other investors and homeowners on design build. Prior, we were just doing our own projects. That's what we focused on, but we expanded kind of, I don't know, maybe in the last 6 or 7 months to be more open to working with other investors on their new construction projects. And we have rentals in various parts of the country, so a mixture of long-term rentals and midterm furnished rentals. So that's actually my favorite strategy. I can talk about MTRs all day. So if you ever want to get into that discussion, we can go there. I'll hand it to Greg.
I think Jennie answered all the other questions. I just have to say who I am. I'm Greg. I started this back when I was 18 years old, being a carpenter, and then started up my own business, framing houses at 24, and then grew into a GC, built everything possible, and then kind of decided I didn't want to work for other people anymore. I want to work for myself, and I met Jennie, and we started buying properties and developing our own. So kind of where we're at. So now I'm the GC, project manager side, Jennie's the design side, and realtor.
And operations and marketing and financing and all the other stuff that goes into the business.
all the hats here, right? And so, we have a very broad amount of experience here in our group, everything from, people who are just looking for their first deal, all the way up to full-blown, syndication of several hundred unit apartment buildings, right? And so for those of us who are just getting started, either they're looking for their first rental property, or they're a newer agent or a wholesaler, whatever that role may be, as developers, how would you define what a developer actually is?
A developer is everything rolled into one. So you got to find the property, you got to buy it, you got to figure out how to split the profits. You have investors, and then we like our favorite part is designing it from the ground up. So we like to be hands-on with that. Architects are usually not very good at that. So people think they can just let an architect design a house or a property, and it's not usually their strength. So I feel like that's where we work very well together. And then the biggest part is analyzing. You got to make money. If you don't make money, you're not going to be in business very long. So that's the most important part.
Yeah, and I would add to that as we're like a mom pop developer type, company. I struggle with that word because we're just like 2 people that have only been doing this together for like 3 years, 3.5 years, and we really just got into development within the last maybe 2 years. But as developers, I think you don't necessarily have to general contractor project. I know that there are developers who will outsource that or partner with a GC firm. So I think as a developer, you have a vision and you're probably good at underwriting and you will find the deal or have someone find you the deal. And then you can, do the general contracting and building internally like we do, or you could always outsource that if that's just not something you have in-house.
Love it, and I gotta say, even though you guys have only been doing this for a very short period of time, I wanna make sure you don't shoot yourself short, because in this short amount of time, you guys have done a ton of really awesome stuff, so I just wanna make that very clear to everybody that, like, you guys are doing some awesome stuff here. And so, from people like me, I've never done any sort of ground up development or anything like that, like, what is, from a 1,000-foot view, I guess, what would you say is that process like? Everything from even starting your search for a potential piece of land or potential tear down opportunity, all the way up until, exiting, selling the property or refinancing that for a long-term rental. Like, what does that process kind of look like?
That's a good question. You want to address that first? Then I can chime in.
Yeah, I would just say we constantly analyze properties. We're not gonna do 15 deals at once, and like make a little bit of money. We want to make a good amount of money on one property. So we like to do 2 at a time. That's kind of our number. And right now we're going to finish one and still got one going on, but we're looking for properties right now. Every day we analyze probably 2 or 3 really. I mean, I don't think Jennie sleeps, so like 3 AM I'm getting lights on the red thing. So so it's a constant process of looking for properties because the numbers we look for. So,
yeah, I think one of the big things is finding land that's being underutilized in some capacity. So zoning is a big issue for us. There are a lot of zoning regulations in the city, if you're familiar with that. And it's very restrictive. So if our bread and butter is single family home new construction and small multi-unit buildings, so 4 units and under. We would like to get into larger units, but we just haven't yet. Things start to change after 5, 6 units and then above. So we're trying to master single family home, maybe doing 2 or 3 at a time next to each other, which is a harder find in the city for land that you can either, divide into 2 plots where they just come, ready. It's very hard to find those. Or a piece of land that you can build a 3-unit on or a 4-unit on by right, without having to go to the zoning board of appeals and get a variance or a special use permit or some sort of exception to however it's zoned. So finding land that's being, so if you find, let's say, a house on a piece of land that is zoned a certain way, if you tore that house down, you could build a 4-unit and then sell each unit for a certain amount, way more than if you were to just renovate the house or tear it down and build a single family home.
Like a single family home on an RT board for zoning, where it's a double lot, that's a gold mine. It doesn't even matter if the house is board, you could tear down $1 million house and build $5 million in condos. That's what we look for. So, and Lincoln Park, for good example, places like that, you might find a big house on a double lot that's zoned there. So that's what we really look for. It's just really hard to find.
Yeah, I think the answer is identifying the land, finding the deal. Yeah, would be the biggest. I think you kind of strayed from the crux of your question.
Right? I mean, that's a good start to it, right? So it's like identifying that piece of land, and then, let's say you identify that piece of land, and now, as you said, you have to potentially go through zoning variances, or you have to work with the city in terms of seeing what's allowed, obtaining the permits, and going through that construction. Throughout that process, you're leaning on a lot of different people, right? A lot of different people who are experts at what they do, with different type of team members that are involved that you regularly work with on a regular basis throughout the entire process.
So for us, the biggest people in our lives are architects, a zoning attorney, the alderman, whoever that is, for whatever ward we're finding a property in or potential property in, maybe even another realtor, maybe a wholesaler, capital partners, whether it's an equity partner or a debt partner, so like a hard money lender or a local bank or a capital partner. And then, yeah, those are probably the biggest people that we're working with. Yeah,
Perfect, yeah, so a lot of times we don't know the answer to zonings, a lot of times we won't know like the maximum we can build on property, architect will chime in, and give us some feedback also, so that's huge. Like the ADU rules, we still don't understand those 100%, so. So, yeah, so we,
we got it, we're gonna change
Yeah.
it again.
and we love to do new construction, so if you tear down the property, you can't use the ADU option, is what we've been told. Maybe, yeah.
It's hazy.
Yeah.
Hazy. It's a lot of haze.
It sounds like the city it's not in a position quite yet where it's very easily favorable for people who are trying to invest in the area and take advantage of that program. But hopefully in the future, it'll be a little bit better. But I guess at what point in the process do you involve some of these people, right? So you mentioned the architect a lot, right? So are you involving them? Like, are you reaching out to this architect every time you find a piece of land that could potentially work? Or is this something that at some point or another, you already have a general understanding of like, okay, this is zoned this, so we can probably go here, and then we'll reach out to them and make it along.
It's a combination of the two. We've done so much digging and underwriting and analysis on zoning. And speaking with zoning attorneys and architects that we do have a general idea of what we can and can't do on a property, but sometimes we find a property and it may be a little bit smaller than we thought, and because of how it's zoned, we're not sure if we can put 3 units or 4 units. And that 4th unit is like the make or break. So almost immediately we'll go to our architects and just kind of run it by them and say, you know, give us the lowdown, give us some insight into this, you know, what's the highest and best use of the property? What can we do? Can we do this? Things like that, yeah.
So, okay, so now let's say you've gotten to the point now where you've identified a piece of land that you can develop on. The zoning makes sense. You've worked with your architects and zoning attorneys to make sure that everything can go right. And you're in a position now where you're getting ready to close. And of course, one big step that you have to overcome when you're getting ready to close is financing, right? So I wanted to touch base on financing in terms of how you're structuring your debt, how you're structuring your equity, and also making sure that the funds that you use to acquire the deal and fund it are able to get paid back on the back.
We typically use hard money, and we just started opening up to investors coming in with us, so it's still a learning process for us. But like how we structured one, for example, is we have an investor that came in and we pay ourselves a GC fee while we're building the project, and then we're partners in the end of the profit. So depending on how much money they invest in the project, that will determine how much percentage profit they get at the end. And we always have like, our numbers are laid out, so they'll see like our estimated profit at the end, which is just an estimated profit. You never know. So they got some risk in the game too. But that's an equity partner that we're using right now. And I think like like I said, they bring a certain amount of money to the table, they get a certain amount of percentage of the profits.
Yeah, so the construction loan is coming usually from a bank or a hard money lender. That's the big portion of the loan. And then we have to bring usually 15 to 20% of the total cost to the table. And so that 15 to 20% gets split between us and our equity partner or partners in certain percentages. It differs. It depends on the person and what they're comfortable with. And it's flexible, you know, it's not like black or white, you know, it's you either give us this much or the deal's off. Everybody has a certain level of comfort, but it does have to make sense for the size of the project. Yeah, I mean, if it's a big portion down and we're running the whole project, you know, ideally we're bringing quite a bit less cash to the table, but we are giving, you know, a lot of our time and energy to the project, as well as a little bit of cash.
Right.
Yeah. So as an equity partner, you would bring the bulk of the cash in an ideal world. And then as a debt partner, if we just work with a bank or a hard money lender, we're 15 to 20% of our own money, and then they pay the rest.
That's great. In terms of terms that you guys are, you know, can eventually give, if not right off the bat. I mean, do these hard money lenders and other bank sources for debt, do they typically cover both the acquisition and the rehab, and then you guys have to just put down a certain percentage of the total cost, or is it sometimes even just a certain percentage of the purchase, and then they'll fund like 100%? Have you encountered any of those two different situations?
Yeah, it all depends on how you buy it. So in the past, when we first started, we bought a couple of old bungalows. It was like a foreclosure and a bankruptcy, and we just paid not cash, but using a line of credit from our bank source, our own personal bank. And so we just bought that outright. So when we went to get a loan for the rehab from a hard money lender, they paid 100%. But it's all based on percentages of the bigger picture. The loan to cost or loan to value, I don't know exactly how they decide on that. But normally for us, we're doing, unless we have to go through a zoning change and we know that there's an extra 6 months built into that timeline, we'll generally do an acquisition loan with the construction portion. It's all wrapped in one from the get-go, because the idea is that we go under contract with like a closing date that's maybe 45 to 60 days out. The minute we go under contract, we're starting our architectural plans, so that hopefully by the time we close, plans are done, we're ready to submit to the city for a permit, and we can break ground shortly thereafter. There's not a lot of lag time in an ideal world. And so we need to have the construction financing in place, usually sooner than later. Do you have anything to add to that? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think, one of the big caveats to consider too is in terms of like what you're even able to offer the seller of that piece of land and the seller of that property from the get-go, especially if the plan is for ground up development, right? Because ARVs are heavily dependent on comparables in the area. But it sounds like, especially more recently, what you guys are building a product that's much higher quality than some of the existing housing stock that's there, right? So when it comes to your exit on the back end, right, you get your financing, you've identified the property, the zoning's already in place, you're ready to break ground. How do you kind of estimate like what that value is going to be on the back end for something, especially if it's brand new product?
Like an ARV of the end product comps.
So even if
Yeah.
it's a brand new build, you just reference other brand new builds.
It has to be comps. I'm a licensed agent, so I'll use the MLS. I mean, Redfin is fun too, but I try to use the MLS wherever possible. But yeah, the way that we underwrite our deals is first by running comps to see what we can build there and if it makes sense numbers wise. And then we'll decide on the exit strategy at that point, right up front. Okay, we're doing single family homes, or we're doing a 2-unit, or we're doing a 3-unit or a 4-unit. Based on comps. Yeah, otherwise, if the comps aren't there, it makes it an almost impossible deal for us to purchase.
Yeah, I'd say we never value ours more than the highest comp in that area. We wouldn't say, even if ours is gonna be bigger and nicer, we feel comfortable like matching that as a comp. So that's what we use for our ARV basically.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm thinking like if you're in an area where there hasn't been, like, let's say you're the first one in that area that's doing like new development in a half-mile radius of whatever property that you never did. Okay, good to know.
Not yet.
So I guess now when it comes to working in the city of Chicago, there's new developments taking place everywhere, and tons of stuff going on in Florida and Texas and all that stuff. But we're here in Chicago, and this is where you guys are running your business. So what specific nuances you think are here in Chicago that people who may be looking to, rehabbing their property or redeveloping a property, or doing what you guys have been doing with new development should be taken into consideration here in the city?
Nuances or in your face, like snow and ice and like a bitter cold winter where construction has to go on pause?
Yes,
Or you mean subtle things?
and or loss and or extra long time frames to getting things that you need to move forward.
I mean, I don't think it's too bad, like developing wise in the city, some of the inspections that are pain in the butt, but I feel like I watched the shows in California, I'm like, we're lucky, like, we don't have to wait a year to get permits, or 2 years, so it could be worse, and this is a big city, so always gonna be issues. Coming from the suburbs, the inspectors were just a nightmare out there, like, they would have their own little thing they look for. You come to the city, and I feel like the inspections go smoother, but getting to the inspections is like setting it up, scheduling it, that kind of thing is the hard part. But, I don't think it's too bad. We've got it dialed in a little better nowadays than we used to have it. But as far as pros and cons, I feel like the numbers are just great in Chicago. Where you can buy something and where you can turn around and sell it in the right neighborhoods, it's just, you can't get that anywhere else that I know. But we always look to expand the floor in other areas. It just hasn't happened yet.
And I do think weather is an issue, especially with new construction. you know, you can find a great deal and it's not the ideal time to find that deal. And so you don't want to lose it, so you may buy the deal, but then you have to wait however many months more past the ideal start date, just because you can't break ground when it's too cold out. And so.
Right now, is the best time to buy property. Right now is the best time to buy property for us. Like, we want to buy something right now, because we plan to develop it, we're starting in spring then, like breaking ground so close.
You think now is a good time? Okay. I would say I'd like to find deals in December so that we can do our plans and then break ground on like March 31st. Yeah, that for me would be, I mean, but yeah, we can certainly look for deals all the time. We've gotten caught in the middle of winter. Actually, this project that we're working on North Sheffield Avenue in Lakeview, the 3-unit building, we literally broke ground sometime it was late October. And I mean, we were just like taking a chance. We had gotten our zoning approval for the variance and the special use permit a month later than we thought we were gonna get it. And that just changed everything. So we broke ground and, you know, excavated and poured the concrete and bricked up the entire structure through winter. And we just got really lucky that we only had that one horrible week of like, you know, the polar vortex week or whatever it was. But yeah, we managed to get through that. I don't know how.
Jenny calls it lucky, I just call it good. Fast.
We were lucky, but we also had to like, you had to get special heaters, and we were looking into like wrapping the whole building because we didn't want to stop bricking it up. And
We bought the plastic, we just had to put it up, so we had the plastic ready to go, then close it, and the heaters ready to go, like I had them rented, we just never used the heaters hardly that much, you know.
we got charged for those heaters. Better use them.
And the plastic turns, you know.
We did, we returned the plastic. They were very nice to take it back 4 months later. Yeah.
So throughout this time, you guys have taken a ton of action, right? I mean, I know you guys had mentioned that this is just 4 years since you've been in this business, and you guys have done a ton of really cool projects. What are some of the learning experiences that you've kind of encountered over the years that you're able to kind of share with people maybe aspiring to getting to where you guys are today, or maybe even just doing the first fix and flip or redevelopment of a single family home multi-unit?
One of the biggest learning experiences for us, I think, we got involved, I'm going to say probably at best possible time. We closed on our first 2 rehabs the week before the COVID lockdowns, and everyone thought things were going to stop, but it didn't. And we had like our pick of the litter with contractors because nobody really had work and they were looking for work. So we got those projects done so quickly, and then the market, you know, it took off, low interest rates, and everybody was selling above asking, and we got multiple offers. And so we got in at a time where that's not normal. And I really feel like we did a good job, but I really feel like we got so lucky, and we sold our properties, like our first 6 properties sold so fast that we got spoiled. And now when a property sits on the market for like 2 weeks, we're freaking out. I'm freaking out because I'm like, this should not be happening. But that was a big lesson, I think, for me, is just to, first of all, have more patience, and also just to not underwrite deals with higher ARVs just because we happen to have sold those all over asking or asking. And I don't think we do. I don't think that we do underwrite with higher or ambitious ARVs. I tend to be more conservative. He's a little bit more ambitious, and he's like, we can sell it for this. And I'm like, let's just write it right here. And then somehow we meet in the middle. But I think that was a big lesson coming from starting at that time.
Yeah, I just feel like we've missed out on so many deals that we undervalue, and then I see other investors come in and buy it, and they develop it, and they sell above what we were analyzing it. So we've lost out on a lot of deals just being too cautious, you know. Like there was this one house we did, and it was the biggest, nicest house in that neighborhood, but we felt it was a special neighborhood. It was Kilgore Park, and I saw it like, we got to get more properties here quick. As soon as this sells, everybody's gonna know. And sure enough, like that one sold, then other developers came in right away and were taking off the double lots and stuff like that. Before we were undervaluing those, and we sold ours probably too cheap at the time, because it was the biggest, nicest house. But we missed out on probably 4 or 5 lots on that street because we were just too cautious.
So what is your lesson to not be as confident?
Just sometimes you just have to take a risk and you go with your gut. I say, go with your gut and just do it and it'll work out.
Yes, go with your gut, but if you have a business partner and you also have to like remember that their gut may be telling them something different. And that's a lesson too for us as like partners for the last several years is just, you know, we have to respect each other, and sometimes we will lose deals. We just will, because I'm underwriting it one way and he's underwriting it another way. And, you know, my philosophy with Chicago is that there will never not be another deal. I truly believe that. And that's why I also believe in sharing as many resources as possible with other people, helping people as much as we can with what we've learned and experienced, because you're not going to take my deal from me. You know, like there's going to be another deal. There's enough for all of us in this city.
Yeah, I love that. And to your point too, I mean, no deal is better than a bad deal too, because if you end up in a position where you have a bad deal, there's just a lot of pain that could be involved with that, let alone slowing down your momentum with future projects too, because now you're trying to make up for that loss in the future. But yet, Greg, you also make a good point. Like, I'm seeing these properties now where I'm like, geez, this needs a full gut. And like, this is what the ARV is of something that was like completely rehabbed, you know, not too long ago. And like, this is just a complete gut rehab. I don't know how these people are still managing to make it happen. Maybe they're riding the wave of appreciation. As we all know, inventory is the primary reason why prices have pretty much stayed stabilized despite interest rates continuing to go up. And you know, kind of just figure it out. See what can make what can make our profits so. We're gonna go ahead and open up for questions from the group here. But before we proceed, I just wanted to touch base on you guys are working with other investors in the area, other home buyers in the area. If someone's interested in working with you guys, how do they go about getting started?
Well, you can reach out to us. You can call or email info@propertypeoplellc.com, comes right to me. We are also on Instagram, so I would say probably check us out on Instagram and just see some of our work and make sure that it at least preliminarily aligns with maybe your vision or what you're thinking of you might want to do, so that you know that we're the right fit or maybe the right fit. I would say that's a best first step. We have a website too, and we have a little bit about like design build and what it is, but you can Google that too and just find out what design build is. Basically, we will just help you with your project from soup to nuts, if you want everything from even helping you underwrite a deal if you want, and then sourcing everybody involved in order to get the construction projects completed.
Great, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're gonna go ahead and open it up for a little bit of questions for the group, if that's okay. And then anybody have any questions you want to ask?
I know you guys said you started 6 years ago together. So
3.5.
right now, was getting into new construction, like development, always the goal? I know you said you bought a bungalow here and there, but how did you guys kind of get into development?
Yeah, so the question is, how did we get into new development from where we started, which was rehabbing? And no, it was not always the plan. We bought 5 bungalows to rehab before we got into new construction. So the 5th bungalow, I call it a bungalow, that house wasn't a bungalow, but it was like a 1914 old Chicago house that needed a gut rehab. It came with an adjacent vacant lot, and it was being sold along with the house. And we saw that as an opportunity to either tear the house down that was existing and build 2 brand new single family homes side by side, or rehab the house that was existing and build 1 new construction single family home right next to it. So we opted for the latter because the existing house was so beautiful and large and already had like a full 2nd story on it. And so we decided to keep that, renovate it, and then just do the single family new construction. And after we did that, and I think because we did them side by side, like simultaneously, we were gut rehabbing one and doing new construction right next door at the same time, it became really clear how much easier the new construction project was, just how much less BS involved in that type of project. And after that, I decided I only wanted to do new construction. I said, I'm never doing another rehab again. I've changed my mind since then. I will do rehabs again now, but that was really eye-opening. What about you? Do you have anything to add to that? Oh, okay. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Do you feel like there are less budget surprises with new construction, just because you're not opening a wall up and seeing it against you, or material labor?
So Ben's question is, do we see that, there are less surprises in the budget when you do new construction versus renovating, because you're not, you know, opening up some random wall and discovering a whole thing that you didn't know was gonna be, needing attention? I'm gonna let Greg answer that first.
I would just say the biggest thing with new construction is a lot more materials going in, so obviously we're really tied to material prices. So on our last project, we got really hit hard by that huge jump. Labor wise, we stay pretty steady, the prices. We're always getting estimates and shopping around, people like pretty level on that price point, but materials, we've been blindsided by that, and there's just so much more money going into materials that a 10% change, and when you're building a $1.6 million building, it's a big jump, so it changes quickly. But we just gotta we learn to have a buffer now and there to protect ourselves.
And I also would add that I think it depends on the project that you're doing, like the type of construction and how seasoned you are in that. This is one of the reasons, while I know Greg wants to build a high rise tomorrow, I would rather stick with single family homes and small multi-unit buildings, because the more familiar we become with that landscape, the more we have our budget on point. You start going into, you know, a 5 or 6 unit building, or a 10 unit building, or a 12 or whatever, and even bigger, you know, even though it's new construction, there are things in there that we've never seen before. I mean, Greg has built those, but as a general contractor, he's not been on the development, you know, where he's underwriting the deal, purchasing all the materials with his money or his investors' money. So there's a lot of stuff you can get surprised by in new construction. And that's why I think it's really important to find a niche, master that niche, and stay with that. Don't get, I would say, don't feel like you always need to be doing bigger and bigger and bigger. I know. We'll high rise one day, but we'll get there. But for now, I mean, you know, just knowing what our costs are with a single family home, the better we get at that, the more we can scale. Sorry, not sorry.
Thanks. Sorry, I missed this earlier. You probably touched on this, but you mentioned like costs, right? Increasing. I feel the material still has a way to go. You also mentioned that like you feel there'll always be another deal. Your special case of general contract experience in-house. Do you feel that there's only so many quality, reliable contractors around that discover general? Or do you think there's always another better or just a good contract? Because otherwise, the ones that have a good reputation sort of get backlogged.
Yeah, the question is, in case anybody didn't hear it, is do we think that there is always another great general contractor or subcontractor to be found, to be had? Do you have thoughts on that?
That's one of our struggles, because we're developers and we're trying to make money, so you can't just pay a high-end GC that might be working on somebody's personal home. They can make more money on that. We're trying to make money at the same time, so it's just a constant battle, finding the right fit. And somebody does good work, or, you know, we're giving them a lot of work, you know, that's how they make their money off of us, not just one project. So we have to find that fit, and it's very hard to find, and just keep it locked in. Like I said, they get busy, then they go on to somebody else, and so we're constantly looking for plumbers, drywallers. We have some of the stuff that are great, but we're always looking for plumbers for the main.
Also, I think in Chicago, it's too easy to become a licensed general contractor. So I would just caveat anybody that's looking to hire one to do extra due diligence. There are probably thousands of general contractors in this city, and all you need is a certificate of insurance and to pay like a $300 or $500 fee to the city. There's no test, there's no vetting or verification or anything like that. So that's kind of the scary thing. I've talked to people who have hired general contractors and they just, they're getting screwed left and right, and then it's too late. So that's one scary thing. And yeah, I think, is there always another contractor to be found? There is, it just depends on, a budget is a big thing too, for us, like Greg was saying, we're not custom home builder buyers, right? Like, I'm not looking to hire you to build my custom home so I can live in it. Then I'm gonna pay you top dollar and I can get the best general contractor around and the best subcontractors. But for us, it's finding that middle ground where we're on a budget for everybody. And so, but we also don't want crap work that Greg has to go around and redo, which he's had to do quite often in the past.
Yeah, that's why we got our own license. That's the main reason why we got licensed. We were paying this GC fee, and then I would end up going around, it just wasn't the quality we wanted, and it just could not find a good GC. So that's why we went back to me being the GC and like we hire subs, which in the end, if we make more money that way, it's just more work for me right now. So eventually, and that's why we like subs that we can count on. You tell them they do what they say they're gonna do, it makes my life much easier, and Jen's too.
How do you, or what's your strategy to attract good talent and keep them in general, outside of just providing them work?
For subcontractors, you mean?
Yeah, if you guys are performing the GC, all the guys that will actually do the labor, so you find those guys.
I think I heard you. I want to just make sure I want to repeat the question. How do we attract good subcontractors and keep them? That's a good question. I don't know. If you have the answer, I'd like to know.
I'd say just the amount of work we have for them and then paid weekly. So, the contractor, the biggest thing is getting paid from developers. We pay every week, like every Friday, you turn an invoice Friday, you get paid the following Friday. So that's a huge incentive for people that just know the money they're waiting. As soon as they complete something, they get paid.
That is a big thing. And even that sometimes doesn't work. I'm not trying to like scare anyone if you haven't dealt with subcontractors before, but it's amazing how much money isn't even an incentive to some people. They just get really, really busy and they won't turn in an invoice. They won't give you a lien waiver. And yet Friday comes and they want to get paid. And I'm like, where's your invoice? And did you even complete this part of the project? And where's the lien waiver? And then they start complaining. And then next thing you know, they won't work for you again. So it's a constant challenge. It really is. I think if you're a bigger developer, you probably have a roster of, trades, right? You probably have 5 HVAC qualified contractors at your disposal, and you'll have them all bid your project and they're all good, and then you just pick the best one. But we're still small and we're still fairly new, so it's really still a learning thing for us, and it's a challenge. Question?
So are there any neighborhoods that are like your bread and butter, and any neighborhoods that you kind of like shy away from?
We love the north and northwest side of Chicago, and I think it's only because we started there. And that's another thing that we were taught when we first started doing investing, right? Flipping and new construction was keep your projects within a certain radius of each other, because otherwise you're running around and driving like crazy. And in a city like Chicago, there's always traffic. So if you can be like within 3 to 5 miles of all your projects, you'll definitely be more efficient as a business. So we love the north and northwest side, again, because that's where we started, and then it just kept growing in those areas. But that said, there are parts of the west side that we love and parts of the south that we love and would be open to developing in or partnering, on or collaborating with. If you find deals in those areas that are good, we would be open to those areas too.
Build high rises, we got to be downtown, so we're looking down.
Just to piggyback on the last question, are there any hot markets you see upcoming that you'd want to get into in the future?
I think there are probably hot markets in Chicago. I don't know that I'm privy to any that you're probably not already privy to. But I think the key to remember is whatever you're specializing in and who your target buying demographic is, that's where you have to buy, even if it's not hot. So if you're looking at it from like a development perspective, if you're looking at it as like a long-term rental, right, you're looking at either cash flow or have appreciation, I think it's a different perspective. That's the way I see it.
I feel like Lincoln Park, like where we're at right now, is always gonna be hot because it's just a high demand area, and the price point we're at, it's stable. And just the price point we're at, I just feel like those people who afford those homes are always gonna have money. They're not gonna be worried about the interest rates and stuff like that, so that's where we're focused right now. But I do like Westwood and stuff like that, I really see it growing and developing quickly. We've started to analyze deals over there now, we haven't done anything over there yet, but that's where our next project is, we're building a house for somebody, and they said there's a few lots today, West Town. And so I do like that area, it's just kind of, we're on the fence of jumping over right now.
Sorry, we don't have the insider secret on the hot areas that you may be looking for.
I had to try.
I mean, Lincoln Park is always hot, but it's stable. Lakeview and Lincoln Park are always stable, that's what we like for what we're doing. Yeah, lots of hops, exactly. Great point.
So Jenny, you said you do midterm. So like, how did you learn how to get into that space and like, what do you like about it?
Midterm rentals. So I've actually known about corporate furnished rentals for many years, probably like 15 years, but I knew what it was just by name, like, oh, corporate rental, a business traveler needs a furnished rental, but I didn't even look into it. And then I met a colleague of mine, Corey Dieter. I don't know if some of you know her from the ladies investor meetup. She's one of the co-organizers. So she has been renting out one of the bedrooms in her home to a travel nurse or travel medical professionals for several years now, I'm guessing. And when she told me about that, I just thought that's so cool. And that was really what got me looking into it. And after I learned more about it, I decided to get more involved. And it's also, with a furnished rental, you get to really explore your passion for design, which I love, and I have a huge passion for. So I bought a house in Tennessee where I used to live for 10 years, and I made it into a midterm furnished rental, and looking for more. It's fun. Yeah.
You weren't calling me saying it was fun when you were down there.
I had a horror story that I'll tell you about in September when everything's over. With midterm rental. Any other questions?
Learned on your way where you thought your time like this, but really preferred it. Just some things that you learned along the way, like I'll never do this again. But they actually prefer it the opposite.
That's a good question. I haven't actually experienced that yet. Only my light fixtures, but I don't think I'll change those for like just a buyer unless it's a custom, right? And they pick the light fixtures. You're never going to make everyone happy with your designs. I will say that from a more practical standpoint, I have gotten feedback from Greg and from other, contractors who are doing the labor on the materials that I'm choosing, specifically tile. Tile is very heavy, and if you choose large format tile in small spaces, that can be really challenging. And I didn't know anything about that. So we did a powder room in our last 4-unit building that had 24 by 48 floor tile, and the room was probably 26 by 49. Yeah, so he's like cutting all these things and trying to get this massive heavy tile in this small space. And so lessons like, the tile looks beautiful, but it was a pain to get in there, and really I think unnecessary, looking back. So that's a big lesson for me is tile. But as far as design, yeah, I think you want to be kind of basic and classic, but not boring like everybody else. But yeah, you'll never make everyone happy. There's a buyer for every house. There's a lid for every pot. There's a seat for every gum.
on the design side, we started off very boring and gray like everybody else, and then, and then, once the COVID hit, everybody wanted more enclosed rooms and more custom design, and felt like things changed quickly then. And then, like, you can tell by Jenny's earrings, a lot of her houses started looking like her earrings, like, that's weird. Like, she would send me some designs like, we're not doing that, like, I had to put my foot down on this one. I'm like, you can dial it down a little bit, we'll go with it. But yeah, she's pretty good, and for the most part, she does it all the design herself, so. I have a little feedback, but not much.
Yes,
So regarding design, do you have a base theme that you work with and kind of tailor that, taper it per property, where the colors change, or do you actually switch out materials?
yeah, do we have like a base theme or colors per property, or do we switch out materials? I think, we would be a lot more efficient if we did have a base that we could just stick to, but I don't operate that way. It's not that it's boring for me, I'm just, I am a creative, and in my head, I'm always, it's just it would be like going against my nature to just do the same thing over and over again, but maybe with like one different color here and there. I physically have not learned how to do that yet, but I do think it would be a good idea if you want to scale this business to be able to do that. Cause we're on a non-custom budget, but we're building like custom style properties, and you know, that sometimes works and sometimes can work against you just budget wise, because you end up spending a little bit more than maybe you should have or would have.
What's our style? I would say it's a modern Japan theme. We like the woods and the blacks and all that. Yeah, we like those. That's our themes right now. Really, is with the center of everything. And then Jenny will find little tiles and stuff she likes with that. Every building's different with tiles, but the same style and colors. The last two projects have been that. Capture a little bit from the scene.
Black, white wood, I would say, is a theme that we do stick to. Yes. Yes.
Do you think that the white shaker cabinets, quartz counters, subway tile backsplash is like gonna be out soon? I mean, do you think already?
Yeah.
Well, who's your demographic?
I just something that sells quickly.
For a flip?
Yeah. It's on already.
I think it depends on your demographic though, like where are you in Chicago, what's your price point? I do think that matters. You can do subway tile and just do it in a different pattern, right? And maybe throw in some floating shelves or just, you know, different plumbing fixtures that'll make it look a little bit different, make it look pop. But no, white shaker cabinets, I think they're classic. I don't think they'll ever be out. And again, I do think it depends on your end buyer. If you're selling a house for $250,000, it's perfectly fine. If you're gonna sell $1 million home, you may wanna have a little bit more unique selections in there or patterns. You wanna say something?
I get bored with the same thing over and over again. I'm just so bored with those cabinets, like I just don't want to put them in anymore. It's like oak, you know, everything's oak. Back when I first started, I got so tired of oak, I cannot stand the look of oak anymore. Just where I'm at with those cabinets.
That's a good, and that brings up a good point, which is, you know, to a certain degree, you have to feel aligned with the work that you're doing and the designs that you're implementing, but you also overwhelmingly need to think about what your end buyer wants. It's not just what you want or what you're not bored with or what you know, this and that, no offense or anything, you know, so that's the most important thing.
When you're looking at properties to acquire, do you zero in on a couple and then just put in an offer to get those, or do you blanket the market with like several offers at a time and see which one bites?
Do we make more than one offer at once or just kind of?
Yeah, multiple low offers, or do you just zero in on one or two properties and then maybe give them what they're asking? What's your strategy?
There's not enough inventory to do that with now for us. We're not, if we make an offer, it's very, very rare these days. Just because of the deals, the numbers, and you know, what people want to sell their properties for is a lot more than we can pay, or at least what I think we can pay. So we underwrite a lot of deals. I think maybe for every 7 to 8 deals that we underwrite, we might make 2 offers.
I just say it comes down to the numbers, really, we're not a mass quantity company, so if we make it an offer, we want that property, so. We don't lowball people, but some people might think it's a lowball, because our numbers don't make sense to them. So if we put an offer in, we wanna close on the deal, so. That's how we choose, like, we're pretty serious about the property that we select, we think.
Yes,
While we're talking about excited property, do you have any comments or clients, friends, or
comments about appliance trends and cost. Trends don't really matter to me. That's just me personally. I think, again, it's gonna depend on your exit strategy. If you're, building or renovating to rent, your appliances are gonna be just standard, regular appliances, like the Samsung brand. And I mean, within a reasonable budget for your $5,000, $4,000 for your appliances. If you're building $1 million home to sell, then they have to be higher end. They have to fit into a category that makes that buyer comfortable. And they know they're getting some sort of a name brand, Bosch or Thermador, Sub-Zero, Wolf, depending on the price point. So less about trends, but yeah, the buyer at different price points does have different expectations versus also the renter, right?
I'd say when we first started out, if you ever been to the top floor at ARVS, you ever gone up that escalator? Yeah, don't ever do it. You can't go back. And Jenny always said she can't wait to do those appliances, and she finally got to it in this one. It's a whole different world. We could do a whole appliance package for 3,500 to 5,000. Now I think the stove is more than that. We're about it. It's crazy.
Yes.
So when you're analyzing deals, how do you figure out what the value of that new construction? And looking at what the new construction sold for? Do you see that's
Yeah, so running comps for new construction is exactly the same as running it for a flip. I'll start with a half a mile radius. That's ideal. If there's nothing there, I'll go to 3/4 of a mile, and then I'll go to a mile, and hopefully there's something within the mile. But yeah, it's just comps for similar type property as what you want to build.
And now we'll go back like something 5 years old, and how much have things increased in value in that neighborhood too, so kind of use that if we can't find them.
That's a big risk.
So I got a question. So how has that worked in the past? Like you obviously progress. How has it go back? Like maybe we got like 1 million is sold for 1 million. How far off?
I didn't really understand and hear part of the question. I'm sorry.
I'd say with the projects we've taken a year to build those, things are gonna change, you never know where it's gonna go, but we've been pretty good about it, being conservative, that if we are off, it usually goes the other way, so I feel like it's good, like me and Jennie balance each other on the ARVs, but also been lucky with where things happen, I think it's appreciated, so, but as far as analyzing deals, we're pretty close on it, so you can never be exact, nobody's ever gonna be exact on it.
Yes.
What's the difference in, the way that you all underwrite? If you underwrite them separately, what is it that you all take into account that's differently than the other?
Good question. I'd say the biggest difference is when we underwrite, because I underwrite one way and maybe Greg, we use the same spreadsheet. And we kind of go through the same motions, but I mean, Greg might find different comps than I find that he believes is relevant or are relevant, and I may say they're not, and vice versa. I can find some that he doesn't think are relevant for one reason or another. And then some of the loan costs, like he may not know what the most recent loan costs are, because I deal mainly with the financing portion, so my numbers might be a little bit different than his on that, but we'll eventually come together on that. I would say build cost is a big thing. That's something we've really struggled with over the last 1.5 years because it's fluctuated so much. And so we try to use our most recent projects as the best case, right? You know, so, but that said, you know, $175 a square foot versus $225 a square foot is a huge gap. And so getting on the same page with that is probably our biggest difference and challenge, I would say.
Yeah, it's that you never build the same property over again, you know, so if you're building one project, it's $200 a square foot, you go to this property, it could be, you know, a smaller house that we're doing a small house next. The price per square foot is much higher than our average of a small house. So things change every project, you just gotta try and best educating guests you can.
And the cost of materials changes, so that's another factor that you can't control. And labor has changed too. I mean, the cost of labor has gone up a lot in the last few years. Plumbers, we have beef with plumbers. Who doesn't? That doesn't do construction.
And whenever you do the cost analysis on the rehab or build, do you do that by estimating each one of the particular materials, or do you use like a square footage methodology?
To start, I'm a square footage guy, like that's my basic look at everything, you know. Then if we get really serious, then we'll start breaking everything down, but it'd take too long to do every deal, but we can come pretty close by doing a square footage estimate. Just me and Jennie bounce, like she'll do her own analysis, I'll do mine, and then just have a meeting about it if we're serious about it. You guys will, because things can grow. You guys like to put in 10%, 1% without being so conservative.
What kind of contingency do we build into our deals? The answer is none. We should be building in at least 10%, maybe even more at this point, especially with just the way things have gone in the last year with all the unknowns and all these big shockers, you know, rising interest rates and rising prices of materials. I mean, yeah, no, we have like a tiny contingency in there, but we like to think we overestimate the cost of construction, and so that should include the contingency, but no, you should always have, I would say, at least a 5% contingency, at least, and 10% should be, is ideal, but you may lose every deal if you write a 10% contingency into your analysis. So, you know, it's like, how much risk are you willing to take? Yeah, it's a constant challenge, yeah.
Yeah, the line item is actually 5%, but we just always use the right. And I feel like it'll always be that way. If you have that extra amount sitting there, you can make it a little nicer, or do this, you know, I think we're gonna tend to do that, but right now it's 5% is the line item.
I don't, and I disagree that I respectfully, I disagree. I tend to underspend in my categories when I choose finishes. If I know our tile budget is 8,000, I'm trying to spend 6,500 on purpose, because I know that $1,500 is gonna go to something else that I have zero control over. And I do that with appliances, I do that with kitchen cabinets, every category that we budgeted for, I will try to spend less because I know that money is gonna get spent, not because we wanna make something nicer, but because someone's gonna charge us more than we anticipated. It just never fails.
So real quickly, at the end of the day, like how close is your budget, preliminary budget match your actual budget when you're done with the budget?
Great question. How close is our preliminary budget when we underwrite relative to the actual budget at the end of the day? 95% of the time, it's usually very, very close. With the last deal that we completed, the 4-unit in Avondale / Logan Square, Roxy, for those of you who might have been following us on Instagram, we were $200,000 over budget on our construction costs. Part of that was because of things that we didn't know we needed because it was our first 4-unit building. And part of it was hyperinflation. When we underwrote the deal, it was December 2021. We were at 1.25 million. And then by the time we got the permit in April and we had to rebudget everything and get updated bids, it ended up being $200,000 more. We did sell at the original prices, close to the original ARVS, but we had spent $200,000 more. So that really sucked. But part of it we couldn't control. So that's a lesson learned, a huge lesson.
So we'll go ahead and wrap and start transitioning into our networking. But once again, give it up to Jen and thank you again. All right, thank you so much. And again, reach out to propertypeoplellc.com if you guys have any sort of projects, you want to work with them in some capacity, make sure to reach out to them because they are doing some awesome things here. So before we transition to networking, I'm going to invite Perry up because Perry has an announcement real quick about his product that he has available that he's going to market. We want to make sure we share it with all of you guys who are looking to fix the flips into 4 units.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Yeah, I just want to really say I'm a lender. I do a lot of renovation loans, but we have a new product that, you should be excited about. I know we're excited about it. We just rolled it out this week. 2 to 4 unit fix and flip buying renovation funds, meaning that you don't have to have prior experience. Our rates, I believe, are lower than hard money lenders. The fee will be 1%, and the down payment will be 25% based on the total purchase price and the rehab dollars that you want. Interest only for 9 to 12 months. After that, it's a balloon loan, meaning that you sell the property, i.e. flip it, or if you wish, you can refinance it and you rent your loan and retain the property and lease out to the tenants. It's for investors. You never have to live there. 2 to 4 units. I brought some brochures if you want to talk, and I'll get to answer questions. And thanks again for your time.
Yeah, we'll pass that out, guys, here.
All right, guys, so we'll go ahead and transition to networking, but before we do, let's go ahead and get our group picture. So if anybody can line up along those bars, those apps over there, we'll take our group picture and then we'll go ahead and get started with networking. Thanks again for coming, guys, this month.